We've removed the 343 and torn it down. What you see there is a Borg-Warner M12 automatic transmission. Here are the pistons out of the 343. We had 2 broken skirts and 2 pistons with broken ringlands. Here's number 1. So here's that second ringland. It actually moves more than the rings itself. It's like one of those Chinese puzzles. Where's the missing piece? See, the second ringland was also cracked. Same with this other piston here. It had multiple cracked ringlands, the second and the third land. The results of the compression test completely reflected what was going on here. One of these skirts was actually sucked up in the sump of the oil pump. Here's a look at the harmonic balancer that came out of the 343. You can see the bond between the hub and the inertia ring is really dry rotted. This is actually kind of dangerous. This should have been replaced. The funny thing is, on inspection of this motor, it's super clean in there. And you can pretty much see hone marks too. There's a little bit of a ridge. This thing was probably rebuilt recently, driven around for a while, and my guess is it was over revved. Here is a look at the side of the block. Normally the displacement would be cast into it right there. And that area has been ground clear. It looks the same on both sides. Here's a look at the bore in the block. You can see at 4.08, it's a standard bore block. I should rephrase it, 4.08, it's a standard bore 343 or 360 block. Not sure how far this thing can be punched out. May have it magnaflux and sonic tested in the future. Looking at the main caps, there's no way you could put a 4-bolt main cap on this thing. There just isn't the meat there where it needs to be. Here's a look at one of the cylinder heads that came off of it. This is a 67-69 343 cylinder head. And there's a look at the crank. That was a 343 crank. So it was a 343 that was in there. Here's a look at the bearings. Some are showing a little bit more wear than others. And that's basically the rest of the pile. Now I kind of struggled with rebuilding this engine with this 343 crank. I was going to get a 401 crank and stroke it, but I couldn't find one. I was able to find a whole 401 though. 13 hours of driving and an arm and a leg later, it's here. And it runs. It came with everything on it attached to that Turbo 400 transmission there. And this is pretty much how you'll get an engine from a junkyard or something like that, if you can find one. This is actually a pretty rare piece right here. So we're gonna clean it up, paint it, see how well it works. And there's really a whole number of reasons why I wanted this engine versus the one that came out of the car. And included with the engine was a trans. This setup came out of a Jeep Grand Cherokee, I guess. There was a transfer case on here. So I'm gonna have to take this transmission apart and put a short shaft in it, short output shaft in it, and the tail shaft housing. We'll start taking a look at why I wanted this engine versus the engine that was in there. So here's the 401. The first thing I noticed about this thing is this exhaust manifold is designed a lot better than the one that was in the car. This was in the car and you could just see everything would create turbulence and it'd be like a log jam in there. This one's designed more like almost like a Pontiac Ram Air exhaust manifold. So hopefully that fits in the car. These AMC heads that have the dogleg exhaust port are supposed to flow a little bit better than the ones that have the rectangular exhaust port. Here's a look at some rectangular exhaust ports on an older AMC head. A couple other reasons I like the 401 over the 343 is because it's supposed to have a forged crank. You can see here by this sharp casting line that this 343 crank is a cast crank. The rods in the 401 are supposed to be forged as well, and here's a cast rod that came out of the 343. Here we've made a cheap oil pressure tool, put it on the drill, and We're able to get 60 PSI out of this 401. And here's the 401 all degreased with all the bracketry off of it. You just plumb the oil pressure gauge in where the sending unit goes. This oil pressure tool basically gets inserted through where the distributor goes onto the oil pump shaft, and then you can spin it. That's how you know how much oil pressure you can get. We get a washer welded on top there to prevent messing up the timing chain cover. I wanted to do a 401 compression test video for you guys, but this AMC bell housing actually has one of the starter bolt bosses in it. So when it's on the stand, I can't get a starter on it. Well, that's about all I have for now on the replacement motor here. I'm probably going to put an aluminum intake on it, replace the rear main seal on it, new oil pan gasket, check the timing chain, and if that's bad, replace it. And that should be about the extent of it, and we'll see how it runs in the car. From this point forward, I'm probably going to start working on that AMC Turbo 400. Thanks for watching.